Ari Lewis Show.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Messiah Hour here on Israel Sports and News Radio. Thank you for joining us. At any time, you can email the program, messiahhour@gmail.com, or the station Israel Sports and News Radio at gmail.com. And in particular, if you have any questions about different things we've discussed or different topics you would like us to discuss in the future, again, please send us an email. No need to talk to me about it in public. A lot of issues that need to be discussed that are confusing in the Jewish world, especially in terms of Ger. So we figured to bring on the line the expert of the world of Ger. He's the co-author of the book, The World of the Ger, our favorite rabbi for Tzfat, Rabbi David Katz. Rabbi, how you doing out there?
Hey, Ari. Thanks for having me back, and I hope you have your mittens on.
Yes, indeed. So let's talk first the concept of Ger Shabbat. Can the Ger keep Shabbat? Is there a way where the Ger is allowed to do that?
I double dog dare you, Ari, to go out in the streets and ask your local B'ol Tshuva Kiruv rabbis that question.
They'd probably say no. That's my guess.
I wish that were the case. If they would just say no, the world would be a better place.
Really?
Let me tell you what they will say, right? Without naming names, as you said, there's a lot of kiruv going on. God, bless their heart. Things are going good. There's a lot of outreach, B'olei Teshuvas, and we are being a light to the nations and reaching out. You're seeing it. We're all seeing it. But we're pushing the envelope because they're pushing the envelope. When your kid turns 16, he's going to ask you for the car keys. Much different than when he was 15, right? A whole different set of circumstances.
Yeah.
So the question should be asked like this, and it generally, I'm seeing, thank God, it means my work is working, because it was never worded this way until I came around. But I've seen it worded like this. I'm going to word the question. All right, I'm actually going to play a little game with you now that I think about it. Okay. I'm gonna ask you the question, and I want you to answer however you want. If you want to give me how you think you should answer, but let's play a little test. Ready?
Okay.
Hi, Rabbi Lewis. I just want to know, can the non-Jew keep the non-Jewish Shabbat?
Well, I didn't know there was a non-Jewish Shabbat.
You see, this is why you pay him the big bucks, folks, because he hears these things. Kol hakavod to Ari Lewis. That's exactly the point. Why are you not hearing the question, most people, right? If he says, can a non-Jew keep a non-Jewish Shabbat, the answer should be, wow, non-Jewish Shabbat, what is that? Just like Ari said. But what do we hear back when the question is asked, can a non-Jew keep a non-Jewish Shabbat? No, a non-Jew cannot keep a Jewish Shabbat. Nobody asked that. So the answer to the question, and we're going to go on in the show, as I presume, Croesus 9a, a Talmudic tractate, very specifically explains the non-Jewish Shabbat. The difference is where the Jew doesn't do creative labor, the non-Jew has permission to make his cup of coffee. They're not the same Shabbat. The Jew keeps it according to a covenant. The non-Jew keeps it according to it's a day that it's God's day. It's not Saturday. It's God's day. It's a day to not recognize anything but God, i.e. to strengthen not serving idols. So there's two kinds of language. There's two kinds of Shabbat. There's two kinds of service. You need to start training your ear, to hear the question. Non-Jewish Shabbat. Now, if someone says non-Jewish Shabbat, that's a different question, right? So there's a lot of things in the Jewish world coming up. Probably always were there. We're just kind of, bringing it up now in the Ari Lewis show, that you need to pay attention to the language, and a lot of the times it goes over our heads because it sounds simple when really there's more than one way of taking something, or there's a subtle word that people miss and it goes over their head. And that's what we have to get very strong in identifying.
All right, well, let's talk about some issues. Let's talk about first resolve for the Jews. So is there a different resolve for Jewish people than non-Jewish people? Can the non-Jewish people do something about it if they don't have resolve? Because they say, a resolve for the Jewish people. But what does that mean exactly?
Right. So whenever you get into that, number one, to answer your main question, which is, in my opinion, the lesser question, but most people, blah, 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 the answer is the non-Jew needs to connect to his mazel. All right, that satisfies your essential question. But at the end, you added another element, and that's where I'm going to address because it's the more developed answer, right? It's like this. To Ari Lewis, and we're going to ask Rabbi Lewis. This is the Rabbi Lewis hour, correct?
I don't know about that, but yes, I'll be happy to take a question. Go ahead.
Do Jews believe in astrology, Rabbi Lewis?
They should. I mean, they should. Jewish kosher astrology, they should, yeah.
Again, you answered it right because you're a good guy. The party line would have been, no, we don't believe in astrology, right?
Right.
But you actually answered right. Yeah, there's very much a Jewish kosher astrology. The Tanakh commentaries on Isaiah speak about it. And it's an amazing study, right? Ari's right. It's an amazing study, and yeah, you should check into it. But we're going to go with the party line, the anti-Ari. And when we say Jews do not believe in astrology, correct?
That's the most mainstream thing, yeah.
That's wrong. You know why it's wrong? Where is that idea brought? There's a Talmud in Masechtas Shabbos, the Tractate of Shabbos. It says, Ein Mazel Yisrael. And then, right next to it says, Yesh Mazel Yisrael. In English, there is Mazel for Israel. Oh, great. I'm happy now. Fine. And then they say, no. There's no Mazel for Israel. And everyone that on the street says, you see, there's no astrology. The Talmud says there's no Mazel for Israel. And then the pundit would say, but the Talmud says also there is Mazel for Israel. And they say, it's a machlokes, it's an argument, and we can't know, and my rabbi told me we don't believe in astrology. Folks, the answer is like this. You got it wrong. Again, subtle distinction. You didn't hear the question. And this is every opinion. There's not more than one way to view it. The result of it, there's more than one way. But get the question right. The question isn't if we do or don't. Otherwise, every Jew that says Mazel Tov is an idolater. And that's not happening. The question is, granted that we have Mazel, Ari Lewis, can you change your Mazel? Yesh Mazel, Ari is Ari is Ari. Ein Mazel, Ari can become something other than the world's greatest radio host. It's up to Ari to work on his merit and his chuyas and all these things. Or is Ari destined to be Ari? That's the question. Can Ari change Ari? Nobody is saying, is Ari destined to be Ari? That's ridiculous to say no. And so all the more so the non-Jews having destiny to find their mazel. So Ari, you see what I'm saying? They're getting the questions wrong. And then once you get the question wrong, your discussion is off skew. No one's saying that we don't have or we do have mazel. Everyone says we have mazel. The question is, again, can you do something about it? People need to hear the question correctly.
Well, the question is you obviously can. I mean, the point says that Moed Katan, three things are decided: the length of a person's days, amount of kids, amount of money. So then why would you pray? Those are the three most important things. But by praying, you change yourself as a person is the idea, correct?
That's it. The answer is yesh mazel. You have a mazel. Ein mazel means it's very hard to change it, but then yesh mazel, you can change it.
So if that's the case, clearly there is mazal among the Jewish people.
100 billion%. It is absolutely insane to say otherwise. But why do people say otherwise? Because they didn't understand the subtleties in the question.
Yeah, okay.
The language of the question. They say it looks like it says there is, then it says there isn't, and I say, okay, probably there isn't. Bad question.
All right, so it's the issue of the question. Okay, this is the Messiah Hour here on Israel Sports News Radio. My guest is Rabbi David Katz, talking about some interesting issues in the world of Judaism. Let's go to the Kabbalah, another hot topic, which some mainstream Jews don't want to talk about. We'll talk about it anyway. So is there Tzimtzum in Kabbalah? There's a big argument about that. What do you think about that, Rabbi Katz?
The Lurianic Kabbalah, Sfat, circa late 1500s, was a revelation of a new type of Kabbalah called Tikkun. This is a higher revelation of Kabbalah. And it's the Arizal's Kabbalah, Lurianic Kabbalah. His revelation was Tzimtzum. Don't freak out at the Hebrew, okay? Tzimtzum means God, Havdil, okay, saying God took himself out of our awareness so that we should exist, and somehow at the end of that there's still only unity and not duality. Right? There's only God. But I'm not aware of it. I believe that I'm really me and Ari's Ari, but somehow underneath of it all, it's just one God. Agreed? That's a basic understanding of Tzimtzum. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, that's pretty basic, yes.
Okay, so then they say, but there's many ways to understand this, Ari Lewis. So they say there's an argument between the Baal Shem Tov and the Vilna Gaon. Those that are more, again, I'm going to speak very general here. I don't believe what I'm about to say, but I'm going to say what they say. There's the rational approach and the mystical approach. And that is false. But let's entertain this for a second. The Baal Shem Tov, who founded the Hasidic movement, and again, I'm not believing what I'm saying here. I'm saying what they say. We're going to say that in the mysticism, God is everywhere. He's here right now. God is in the Tzimtzum. It's like a fishbowl, and God is in it. And the rational Vilna Gaon would say, no, Ari, God can't be here. When I tap my stender, Ari, that's not God. That's me and my stender. So then they describe the Tzimtzum this way. I.e., they describe the lack of God, and yet the Baal Shem Tov would say, it's a lack of God, but not really. It's all still God. And the Vilna Gaon would say, yeah, it's a lack of God. 100%. He's not here. But when you look at the language of the original teachings, which in Hebrew is called Tzimtzum Kipshuto, which, by the way, the Vilna Gaon never used those words. They attribute that moniker to the learning of the Vilna Gaon because they believe that's really what he's saying. Okay? But he never said it. So they're already attaching words that he didn't say because they think they know what he's saying. The bottom line is when you read the Baal Shem Tov Tzimtzum, i.e. the Baal Shem Tov explanation of God, well, in a way, okay, not totally God, but in this way, and the Vilna Gaon view of God, they don't argue. Not at all. And they quote both sources wrong, therefore they pretend to argue both sources wrong. It would be literally like me wearing two hand puppets, one of the Vilna Gaon and one of the Baal Shem Tov, and me acting out a little puppet show for people. It's that ridiculous. Because they got it wrong on so many levels. And what am I saying they got it wrong? They don't understand the question in the language. The Vilna Gaon isn't as they portray it to be. When you learn it inside, you'll see it's a very different story. And the Baal Shem Tov is also a very different story. The question here is, how many people went back and really learned at the source, the Vilna Gaon and the Baal Shem Tov itself, or did you read about it on an internet website that, this is some yeshiva in some random yishuv and some random rabbi explaining the machlekes for a daf yomi shir, which is connected to the Parsha Shavua. Unfortunately, that's where people are learning. The bottom line is go back to the sources. And in today's world, I hate to say this, a lot of learning is based on the flyers handed out in the synagogues on Friday night.
Again, this is the Messiah Hour here at Israel Sports News Radio. My guest is Rabbi David Katz, co-author of the book The World of Ger. I just want to go to that last point you said. A lot of the learning, Friday nights kind of, you mean in a shorter version, people aren't really putting in enough time? Is that what you're saying with that statement?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's say, let's talk about your life. We're going to make a fictitious account of your life, right? Not even really about you, just I'm talking the proverbial you.
Sure.
All right, Ari's a great guy, everybody. He works hard, okay? And he works not so much. Let's say 9 to 3, right? About 9 to 3, puts bread on the table, and then he goes to...
More 6:45 to 3, but anyways, yeah.
And then he goes to Kollel, and he's a rabbi, and he gives classes, a nice yeshiva, decent yeshiva, right? And he teaches Bava Kama, okay? 2 classes, and then he has a chavrusa in Hilchas Nida, and then he has a quick Musar shir, 15 minutes to the Ramchal. He davens bin Chamarav, and he goes home, and then he wakes up and goes to work. That's a normal guy, right? Can we envision this guy, you and I, Ari?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a lot of people out there like that.
Yeah, he's good. If you were to ask him, what do you do? Would he say, I shovel cool, 9 to 5, 9 to 3? Or would he say, I'm a Rebbe in Yeshiva? He'd say, I'm a Rebbe in Yeshiva. And I also have a little parnas on the side. All right, and on Shabbos, he has a chavrusa between Mincha Marav. He has shalosh shudas at the shul. He has his friends. He has a friend after davening every morning. They talk about Hilchas Erevin. Because he also, this guy's a shtickle tzaddik. And he puts up the Eruv every Thursday night. We know this guy, don't we?
I think so. I think we know a few people like that.
Right. And so his learning, when does Uncle Moishi, this guy, when does he learn for himself? When does he have time to sit down and say, I'm going to learn what I want to learn. Probably never.
That would be right. Yeah, it sounds like he doesn't have time. He's in a bit of a time crunch.
He doesn't have time. If he can't miss work, he's got to prepare the class. He's got his chavrusas. He's got to learn and daven on Shabbos, shalom bayis. He doesn't have time. So the Sutra Achra knows this. Now, I'm not saying he's not learning. You can ask him about Bava Kama, but Bava Kama isn't coming up in internet forums of great debate, right? Was it Chetzi Nezek Knas and Rishus Rabim? I was a short time, which is not quite mulyad. No one says that, okay? Alavai, people would debate Bava Kama in this way, but they don't. So the bottom line is there's juicy topics. The non-Jew in halacha. Oh, that's interesting. The Tzimtzum Kapshuto. Did the Vilna Gaon agree with the Baal Shem Tov? I like that. Right? And on the subway, and this guy lives in New York, he watches YouTube. He watches a shiur on the way to YouTube, right? We know that guy too. Is there mazel for Israel? Oh, that's interesting. I want to learn about mazel. So what's going to happen is he has a YouTube shiur, and then he's going to interrupt that with the Carolina Panthers results, which Ari probably did as well. I did, right?
Yeah.
Go Panthers. Go Cam.
Yeah.
But aside from his YouTube, and this is a sad state of affairs, ladies and gentlemen, his learning is going to be Friday night at the shul. The Gabayim, the run the synagogue, are going to put out really interesting flyers. Chabad will put out, what's that thing called Chabad puts out? Like every week, the little booklet, the Rebbe and this and that. What's that called?
I don't know what it's called. A book.
It's like a weekly Chabad, like everything in the world's in it. Every kind of like little leak, like today's Shulchan Aruch, today's Sikha, today's Rambam, today's Alter Rebbe, today's Tanya, right? And that's great. So I now know that when I go to the 770 Minyan Chabad, which is on Uncle Moshe Street in Jerusalem, I'm going to get the Chabad thing. I like it. I'm going to sit down, and in between davening, I'm going to look. Oh, that's nice. I always wondered what the Tanya was. No, okay. Oh, the Rambam says that. That's interesting. That's really good. And every Friday, after a whole year, I learn a lot of stuff. So when I go to my shiur, I go to give class, again, every day at like 3 or 5 o'clock. They're going to say, Rabbi, that's very interesting about the damages of the Baal Abayis and the Evid that stays in his Maksan. But what does it have to do with the Tzimtzum of the Baal Tanya? Anyone in the Baal Tshuva Yeshiva knows you get weird questions like that, or weird hashkafa questions. And so he'll say, I saw on Shabbos that this is the same argument of the Baal Shem Tov and the Vilna Gaon on Tzimtzum. Wow, this guy knows everything. It's incredible. What they're not telling you is that he's getting it on the go. He's a guy on the run. He's got a family in Derech Eretz, and he saw in the shul there was a great Devar Torah because it was Parshas Tzimtzum, okay, making it up, and he learned. He read it, he studied it, he brought it home after the dinner Friday night before he went to bed. He even went into his study and he learned the article and he said, it was really geschmack. And they quote Shemos 34:4. I got to look up that pasuk. And he fell asleep on his stender, and once upon a time later, he woke up and went to daven Shacharis. Agreed?
Agreed.
This is reality. And Torah comes in funny places for the working man. How many people are really free to learn the Torah? This is why the Rambam says, what is the sign of the Mashiach? When we are free to learn Torah as granted by the nations. We are not free today. We learn what we have to, what our work entails. And I come from the Koilo background. How many people are allowed to learn what they want, when they want, how they want? It's nearly zero.
But, with that being said, the signs, even the internet, the fact that we're able to do this, people can listen to us from all over the world. Isn't it a sign, though, that we're closer to that concept, that we can learn what we want?
Oh, yeah, because now that's the thing. It's a blessing and a curse, because now it's available. You can. But, number one, I had a guy come to visit me a couple weeks ago from Telstone, and he was complaining. He says, Rabbi David, I can't deal with the internet. All the wisdom's out there. But I get sidetracked. I want to go to YouTube, Then I'm watching this, and then hey, World War III with Iran. Oh, look, Ahmadinejad said it's a Holocaust. Oh, look, the Holocaust never happened, says this one. Oh, look. Next thing you know, 20 hours later, right? The internet, the people don't, it's so interesting. All of a sudden, everything you ever wanted to know, right? What is Stuxnet? Oh, that's interesting. How, I looked up today, I thought, who in the world was the coach of the Panthers that win this kind of season, right? I didn't know it was Ron Rivera. And I looked it up on Wikipedia, and Ron Rivera was on the 1985 Chicago Bears defense. I'm saying, now that makes sense. You can make those connections all day long. All day long. To this, to that, and this, to that. But the other problem is bad copy and pasting. If you're going to bring down a source and you type it wrong, really wrong. Let's say Rabbi David Katz, the ultimate authority of Tzimtzum, and I paid $20,000 for my website to get good Google ranking. Can you imagine that, Ari?
Yeah, I've been looking into that kind of stuff, so I can imagine it.
Right. So now what happened was I'm not so diligent in my studies. So what I'm going to do, I'm proving the Tzimtzum, right, and all this, Kabbalah, and I don't even know what it means. And I brought down the wrong verses. It was supposed to be Vayikra 34:4. I quoted it as Exodus 34:4. So now everybody goes on Facebook and they say, you don't know about Tzimtzum because Rabbi David Katz knows. He's the first one that came up on Google. And they copy and paste it. Agreed?
Agreed, yes.
So now someone's going to say, I don't know about this Rabbi Katz and the Tzimtzum website. He's a little funny to me. I'm going to look up his sources. Next thing you know, the sources aren't there. Now, what he should do is call me out and say, hey, bad sources, buddy. But they won't. What they'll do is it still gets spread around. In the end, nobody can check my work. I put out a bad, corrupt file. It's not accurate. Next thing you know, it's on Madonna's website, the wrong things. All over the net. All the Kabbalah, right? Because my website was a top Google hit. I am the source of Tzimtzum, and now I have plagued every single site that you have copied and pasted to. So now when you have the blessing to research, you now have to crack your head, what was this guy really thinking when he made the source? Because I don't know how to find it. I mean, what am I going to do? Call my rabbi and say, where is the source for Tzimtzum? Who wants to hear that question? So it's a blessing and a curse for all the stated reasons.
Again, this is the Messiah Hour here on Israel Sports News Radio. As I mentioned at the beginning of the program, if you have any ideas about topics you would like us to discuss in future programming, feel free to shoot us an email, messiahhour@gmail.com. Again, messiahhour@gmail.com.
I want to just add to that.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I want to add to that.
Yes.
If you want to just send Ari some love, please feel free.
Yeah, that'd be good too. But yeah, try to do an email for him. All right, we're going to talk about Ger Toshav, nice non-controversial topic, saying that tongue-in-cheek, of course. So the current status of the Ger Toshav, what is it right now?
This is my favorite thing in the world to talk about. How'd you know?
I had a feeling. I could just sense it.
That's right. I think you have your Kabbalah powers coming to you.
Could be, yeah.
This is the deal. This is why I like to talk about it. Ask anybody in the world. I dare you, double dog dare you. Right? Write us an email on what the results were. Quote unquote, Rabbi, is there a Ger Toshav status today? And you're going to get the response back, no. Chas v'sholom, no. We all know what the Rambam says.
Right.
Now, maybe if you're lucky, they'll quote you the Rambam. It's Rambam Isuri Bia 14:8. When there's no Jubilee, there's no Ger Toshav status. And then you say, wow, now that's a bummer, because I'm not Jewish, and I would really love to be a Ger Toshav status. And he says, well, I'll tell you what you can do. Yeah, tell me, Rabbi, tell me. You can convert, and I can set you up with that. It's, 3 easy payments of $49.99. Or you can enter a really great program of Noyachite. Well, I'm not really interested in divorcing my wife to move to Brooklyn. Okay, granted, it's great, 3 easy payments. Tell me more about the Noyachite. Noyachite he's a righteous non-Jew, and he keeps 7 laws, and the 7 laws are don't kill, right? Don't steal. Something about don't eat the limb of a living animal. Try not to do that. And he's like, he's like figuring it out on the spot because Jews aren't so savvy with this. And the non-Jews say like, I'll try not to eat the leg of my cow. I'll try. So they try it. The bottom line is, without Ger Toshav on any level, this is your reality. Period. Maybe after a while you say, Rabbi, can I give tzedakah? He'll say, yeah, but don't tell anybody. That's between me and you. So then this guy from Sfat comes along. Him and his co-author, Rabbi Chaim Chlorofine, authors of The World of the Ger, available at gergear.com. And they say that there's this ger all through the Tanakh, all through the Talmud. And the debate goes like this. Rabbi David Katz says, and then again, this is not true what I'm saying. I don't actually say this. And I don't speak into my brisker voice when I say it, however I do say it. But for the drama of Ari Lewis show, I'll dramatize it for you like this. Rabbi David Katz says there's a Ger Toshav status today. There's mamish gerim today that are not Jews. Okay, that's what they say. I don't say that. What I say, we'll say in a second. Then they'll say, the proverbial they will say, but Rabbi Katz has not learned the Rambam, or maybe the entire Torah. We're not sure Rabbi Katz is even Jewish. We're not quite sure he's human. We're not sure. Because everybody knows the Rambam says not until the Jubilee is there this level or status of non-Jew. By that time, the non-Jew is like, I don't know. You're saying Rabbi Katz is a Martian. Something about a Jubilee. I heard about that in church once. Sign me up for something. Either conversion or 7 laws, something. I just don't want to go back to church. And then that's where the confusion begins. It really is that chaotic and confusing. Now let me rectify it right now for you, Ari Lewis.
Let's do it.
Do not get confused between Ger Toshav, status, Toshav status, and Ger Toshav status. Because they're all different. So knowing they're all different, or better yet, not knowing they're all different, you're going to say, is there a Ger Toshav status today? That's like it makes no sense. None. 0, 0, 0 cents. Let me break down for you the 3 words and how they're all used together. You ready for a lightning fast Ari Lewis display? You ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
Ger is the biblical word which can mean alien, sojourner, foreigner, sometimes used as convert, or non-Jew who keeps the 7 laws, or one of the 7 Canaanite nation members who has associations with the Jewish people for terms of commerce and other issues. It's called Ger in the Torah. It has many, 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 many connotations. Did you get that?
Well, I'd like to know what all the connotations are.
There's many, 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 many. Now, there's something called Ger Toshav. Ger Toshav can be in the time of Jubilee. I have a worker on my grounds, and on Shabbos he's not allowed to make for me coffee, but he can make for himself coffee. He's called Ger Toshav non-Jew. Okay. Then there's something called Ger Toshav status. That means Ger Toshav of a particular level of this sojourner helping me put in my patio who cannot make me coffee on Shabbos. That only takes effect when there's a Jubilee. So what do you call this guy when there's not a Jubilee? I don't call him anything. I say, you can either not help me out, or you can be an idolater and therefore make my coffee. If that's preferable to you, bavakasha. If it's not, you can convert. That's not my opinion. I don't endorse that. That's what they say. Now, there's something called status. Status is what's called whatever side of the Yovel you're on. I'm a Kohen. I'm a priest. That's a true fact. But I'm not the status of a Kohen. I don't have a star yichus. Nobody's proving my lineage right now. If I told Ari Lewis I'm a Kohen, because of matters of keeping peace, he would say, okay, great, kol hakavod you. Way to go, mazel tov. But I cannot say, Ari, you owe me all these biblical, responsibilities because I'm a Kohen. He'd say, prove your status. And I would say, I can't, Ari. Eliyahu Hanavi didn't come to prove my lineage. And then he would say, talk to me in the time of Jubilee. And I would say, okay, Ari, I'll call you at that time. Have a nice life. But I'm still a Kohen. But I just cannot demand my kahunic rights. You cop that?
Yes, indeed.
So that's status. There's Ger status, Kohen status. There's status. Whether it's the temple status, you bring a korban, whether it's Jubilee status, whether it was Sinai status, before Sinai, after Sinai, that doesn't mean that there's no such thing as a non-Jew keeping more mitzvot based on the status. The status has a limited focus. I didn't stop being a Kohen because the temple wasn't built. They didn't stop worshiping God because they can't make me a cup of coffee on Shabbos. So that what you have is status has nothing to do with Ger Toshav as an essential quality. It can be an added quality. I can be a proven Kohen if Elijah would come. I can be, but I don't have to be. And I still have the right to claim that I'm a Kohen. So there's a Ger Toshav status that carries with it, maybe I have to support the guy. Okay, there's no status. Therefore, I don't support you. Just like Ari Lewis doesn't have to give me his truma and his vegetables to support me, the Kohen. One day, Ari, you're going to have to. Cough it up.
Nice.
But Ger Toshav then all has many meanings too. Is it the Canaanite? Is it the servant? Is it the Bo Tshuva non-Jew keeping the laws? All devoid of status. Some of those things I just said are dependent on status, i.e. the Canaanite nations. Okay, so while they're not in status, what are they? They're idolaters. That's simple. No Ger Toshav, idolaters. But the other guy, he doesn't lose his identity because the idolater only had an identity of Ger Toshav according to the status. But the other guy, the Baal Tshuva, the repentant non-Jew, he didn't lose his identity from a lack of status. He lost his extended rights from the lack of status. So he's called a Ger Toshav by the Talmudic view. The Bible, the Chumash, calls him Ger. And you don't like that term. You'll say, which Ger do you mean? You're saying Ger is a confusing term? Yes, it is, Rabbi Katz. Good. So we have a Talmud to help us to understand these terms. And in those terms, Ger Toshav has many usages. Rabbi Katz, how would I ever understand which Ger Toshav we're talking about? Did you ever think about talking to the guy? Did you ever think about looking at the context? Did you ever think about learning the whole peripheral point of view? What was the passage of the Talmud? It's very clear. Look inside and you'll see same kind of thing. Non-Jewish Shabbat. Look for the little words. Is he an idolater? Is he a holy guy? If he's a holy guy, it's not a status issue. These little words, people bundle up together and they think it's one big expression, is a fallacy. It doesn't exist. Understand Ger Toshav, Ger Toshav status, Toshav status, Ger status. These are all different things in the Talmud. To put them together as an acronym is false.
Again, this is the Messiah Hour here on Israel Sports News Radio. My guest is Rabbi David Katz, co-author of the book The World of the Ger. Let's talk about majority and minority views of Jewish halacha, especially nowadays. What is the main difference right now?
So, there's a lot of guys on Facebook that are saying, like, hey, you can convert because Uncle Fred, who was a rabbi once in Texas, he said all you have to do is say yeehaw and you become a convert. It's proven. It's written. He once davened in an Orthodox synagogue, and they say that his great-grandmother was maybe Jewish. That's called a minority opinion. I'm dramatizing it. Now let's take it another way. The Talmud's going to say, I'm making this totally up, okay? Making this up. How do you say it? All right, I'm making it up. To give proper tzedakah, and again, this is a ridiculous case. To give proper tzedakah, you have to give 10% of your earnings. Don't you, Ari?
That's right.
That's the majority opinion. Doesn't like almost everybody say that you learned in Tractate Tzedakah?
Most people say that, yeah. I mean, there's exceptions if the person really can't afford it, something like that.
But Rabbi Yohanan, okay, you know what he said?
What did he say? He
said you have to give 200% because if you really mean to give the money, you got to give the money. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go on Facebook. I'm going to say, hey, don't you know the halacha? You have to give me 200% of your earnings. It was Rabbi Yohanan in the Sansino Talmud. Don't you know? That's called a minority view. And a very, very ridiculous example. Okay? The point is, we would never take that point of view. Nobody is doing that. Nobody. So you'd say, okay, most people say 10, and again, it's a fictitious case. Most people would say, okay, 10%, you got to do what you do. They say, okay, the halacha is you give 10% of your earnings. Now, when we come into the Ger non-Jewish world, they say, Rabbi Katz, this is very interesting. What's your source in halacha for this? I say, what halacha are you referring to? Well, what's the majority opinion? Are you bringing the minority opinion? Wrong question, people. Wrong question. Again, it's just like the Mazel thing. It's just like the Shabbat thing. Hear me out. Nobody, and you can quote me on this, nobody says that there's no such thing of a Ger Toshav, repentant, 7 laws, loving God. He wasn't conquered. He's not an idolater. Okay, a great guy keeping the mitzvot. Nobody says that he doesn't exist at all times. Can I get an amen on that, Arios?
Amen.
Therefore, majority-minority doesn't enter. What I just told you, nobody argues with that. You can no longer say minority-majority. So then what is the matter of minority-majority? We have Bob. Bob is a holy non-Jew. You know Bob, Ari? Yes, Bob is a great guy. He keeps many mitzvot, 7, and he gives 10% of his earnings. Okay, great. We love Bob. Where the halacha comes with Bob, we say, okay, Rabbi Katz, Bob's a wonderful man. We love Bob too. I say, yeah, you should, because Bob's great. They say, we got a problem. You want to bring Bob into our shul, and we're okay with that. But Rabbi Katz, how do we bring Bob in? Like, does Bob just show up with a name tag, hi, I'm Bob? Does Bob have to make a declaration? Does Bob reject idolatry? Does Bob reject idolatry and accept the 6 other laws? Does Bob have to sit in front of 3 kosher Jews? Is Bob grandfathered into this from Sinai? Like, how do we work with Bob? And I would say, well, there's a lot of views on this. The majority views the Rambam. A lot of people like the Rambam. Yet he's kosher. He just has to sit before 3 kosher Jews and say, I, Bob, blah, 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 blah. And they say, amen. Here's the gefilte fish, Bob. Welcome to the team. You're a Ger Toshav, non-Jew, non-Jubilee, no status necessary. Do your 7 laws. If you want to give tzedakah, we won't hold it against you. A minority opinion would be, let's say, the Brisker Rav. And he says, look, raise your hand, Bob, and say, I become Ger Toshav, amen, amen, hallelujah. And everything in the middle is the practice of how it's done. There's no question that he exists. You don't say the guy doesn't exist because there's no Jubilee. All you say is, how do we get him to exist within us? How do we bring him in? And there's a halacha for that. And it's stringent views and lenient views. It's not even majority minority. I mean, there's a little bit of that. But it's mostly stringent and lenient. Just like normal Jewish halacha. Right? example for Ari Lewis. It's Passover time, and Ari's got to get the chametz out of his house. Is that correct, Ari?
Yes, that's correct.
And there's probably a strict view and a lenient view. Is that correct?
Correct, definitely.
Would you say it's safe to assume that the strict view is probably also the majority view?
Usually that's the way it works. Yeah.
That's right. That's it. So I want you to be strict, and most people say to be strict. And there's a minority, and there's a leniency. Now, there's also leniencies in the majority of the strictness. So nobody questioned, does Ari have the right to keep Passover? Now, there are such a law because if he becomes an apostate. But Ari's not an apostate, just like our non-Jew is not an idolater.
All right. Again, this is the Messiah Hour here on Israel Sports and News Radio. My guest is Rabbi David Katz, co-author of the book The World of Ger. Rabbi Katz, let's talk about the concept of a Shulchan Aruch for all Jews. How does that work?
This is one of my most embarrassing experiences I had in yeshiva. Ready for this one?
Always going to hear embarrassing stories.
I think everybody's had this embarrassing story. I was in yeshiva, and having our little yeshivish arguments, and I said, I forget the exact context of how I brought it up, right? But blah 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 blah, and of course the Jews poskin like the Shulchan Aruch. What would you say if I told you that, Ari? The Jews poskin like the Shulchan Aruch.
I would say, yeah.
No. What does every yeshivish guy in the world say? He said, the guy who told me, he says, Ma pitom. He says, we poskin like the Ramah. You get that?
Okay, no, I'm confused.
The Ramah is the commentary on the Shulchan Aruch. He was a European rabbi. The Shulchan Aruch was Rabbi Yosef Karo. And the Sfardim based their halacha off Yosef Karo Shulchan Aruch. Do you drink tea on Shabbos?
Sometimes, yeah. I'm more of a coffee guy, but yeah.
How would you make tea? If I came over to drink tea, how would you drink your tea?
Hot water in first the cup, and then you drop the tea bag.
You are such an Ashkenazi.
Well, yeah.
Because you poskin like the Ramah.
Right.
You know what the Mechaber says? The Yosef Karo, the Shulchan Aruch, however you want to call him.
What does he say?
Iroi kli rishon. Put your tea bag in the cup and pour the water from the urn into that cup.
Wow. Which would be considered 100% a sewer the other way, correct?
The Ashkenazim would say it's kali bishul. You just cooked. You just did
you did the right
sin. Right.
Yeah.
The rice. The Sfardim say it's called iroi kli rishon, and you can do it. Once it leaves the pot, it no longer cooks.
Wow.
That's it. So therefore, do we poskin like the Shulchan Aruch? No. And anybody that gets into the smicha programs, okay, which I have done, and a lot of people out there arguing in Facebook world land haven't, no way, shape, form do we poskin like the Shulchan Aruch. I'll tell you a famous one that you know very well, Ari Lewis. Do you say slichas?
Yeah, for approximately a week before Rosh Hashanah.
So you don't do it the whole month before?
No.
Because you're not Sephardi.
That's right.
So what do we say? The Sephardim, how's it go? The Sephardim celebrate Shabbat and suffer the holidays. The Ashkenazim celebrate the holidays and suffer on Shabbat. Because we don't get to do the good stuff that the Sephardim do, because we have laws preventing it, like the kind of meat that we can eat, right? They can have better meat than we can. And we don't take these holidays as seriously in halacha in terms of stringency as the Sephardim. So when there's Facebook World Land is saying, we poskin like the Shulchan Aruch and the Mishnah Brura. False statement. False statement. We poskin like the Ramah. From there, no, we don't. You poskin according to your Rav and your shtetl in Europe. And from there, you poskin according to your derech. If you're Chabad, you go according to the law of Lubavitchers. Lubavitchers are not the same as Breslovers. Breslovers are not the same as Belzers. Belzers are not the same as Litvoks. Litvoks are not the same as Briskers. Briskers are not the same as Sfardim. Sfardim are not the same as Yemenites. So this universalism in Jewish law, that never happened. I don't know if it'll ever happen. I don't know if Mashiach will make that happen. Is it supposed to happen? There's no such thing as what we do and what we always did and what we will always do. Never happened. What you do is you get a superconscious position. If you have a non-Jew looking to take on Torah, okay, the Brisker said this. There's your Litvak, right? And then the Vilna Gaon said this. Chaim Volozhin said that. Sfardim do this. In the end of the day, it's a super conscious position. You see the different stringencies, leniencies. Those are not the same as majority, minority. Majority, minority is 10% of your income versus 200%. No, nobody said. Somebody said, "Oh, you know what, Ari? You can cook on Shabbos. Go ahead, you can cook on Shabbos." Rabbi Bob said so. Okay, Rabbi Bob is a minority opinion. We don't paskin like Rabbi Bob. But that's not what we're talking about in terms of stringency and leniency. That's minority majority, in a dramatic point of view.
All right, again, this is the Messiah Hour on Israel Sports and News Radio. My guest is Rabbi David Katz, co-author of the book The World of the Ger. Rabbi Katz, let's talk about Svei Dinim, Brisker Derech, talk a bit about those concepts.
It's kind of like the Rabbi Katz Unplugged episode, isn't it? The Brisker Derech is called Svei Dinim, which means one word. I think in English you call this a contronym. You're an English teacher. Have you heard that word, contronym?
I've heard of it. I don't know how to describe it, though.
One word with two polar opposite meanings. So it's a contronym. The Briskers will see a word used in the Talmud. This is the tradition from the Vilna Gaon passed on, and now the Brisker, it's like the Harvard Academy of Learning Talmud. Well, and for our world of Ger Toshav, it's a perfect system. It's a perfect example, right? I'm learning tractate Bob, blah 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 blah, and then non-Jew, and the Ger Toshav today, blah 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 blah, right? The Briskers would say, which Ger Toshav, right? It's like a thing by them. So you look for the context, like as I said before. So you would say, in this case, since Rabbi Yochanan in the Talmud that we're talking about is dealing with a Canaanite. There was a Canaanite Ger Toshav that came to the marketplace. That's a Ger Toshav idolater. So Svei Dinim means we hear two things. So since this one was an idolater, and Rabbi Chia, the opposing view in the Talmud, I'm making an analogy here, Rabbi Chia, not like that rabbi said, whoever it was, right, my example, that this guy, Rabbi Chia, said that Ger Toshav cannot be in the shuk. Isn't that amazing, Ari? One Ger Toshav can be in the shuk, and the other Ger Toshav can't. Can you explain why?
No, I don't understand that.
Because it was Saturday, and the Canaanite has a Canaanite market where it's open on Shabbos because they're idolaters. But Rabbi Chia's Ger Toshav is a righteous Ger Toshav who keeps the Ger Toshav Shabbat, and he cannot go into the market on Saturday. For him, it's Shabbos. One is a Ger Toshav idolater. One is a Ger Toshav non-idolater. Svei Dinim, one word Ger Toshav, two separate laws, and they don't contradict. It's two different people.
Okay, so that's why they make that statement.
I mean, in my fictitious case, right? One Ger Toshav can do something, another Ger Toshav can't do something. They would say, well, that's stupid. That's an argument. That's a machlekes. That doesn't make sense. Makes sense. This one was a non-Jew. That one was not a non-Jew per se. He's not Jewish, but he's a quasi-state. He's a Ger Toshav who represents the Ger Toshav Shabbat. So every time you see the non-Jew in halacha or the non-Jew in Torah, it's going to contradict. Ger Tzedek, non-Jew. Ger Tzedek, convert. Right? Every time you look for, there's this one is that one. How can it be a Ger Tzedek eats treif meat like Parshas Rei? It's usually called a Ger Toshav. Let's pretend it was called a Ger Tzedek in some random halachic book, which would be a minority opinion. You'd say, that's crazy. A convert Jew could eat a treif meat? No, it was Ger Toshav, and because for whatever reason they called that Ger Toshav a Ger Tzedek non-Jew. Usually a Ger Tzedek is a convert, and therefore he cannot eat non-kosher meat. It's very deep. It boggles the mind. Welcome to the Talmud. Therefore, to lump these concepts together and say very kind of axiomatic principles is just wrong. we're not conflating terms. It's conflated in vulgar terms to state it when it's lumped together. Clarification is what allows progression of humanity. Not in terms of progressive like liberal. This is humanity taking its proper place. One day, Ari Lewis, you're going to have to stop calling me a Jew. Because the temple's going to come and I'm going to be a Cohen, recognized by everybody. The Levites are going to be recognized as Levites. That Levite and that Cohen are no longer Jewish, i.e. Bnei Israel. The whole system changes. It becomes Cohen, Levi, Israel, Ger. And there's a big difference. Because I don't have the mazel of a Jew. I have a mazel of a Cohen. I don't have the mazel of a Levi. I don't get parnasa the same way as you. I don't eat the same way as you. I don't think the same way as you. You don't think like a Levi. So if you have a Levite friend, you're probably going to argue a lot because you don't see it the same. You have different Judaism. You don't see it the same way. One guy wants to sing in the temple. The other guy wants to bring an offering. I mean, that's what your soul is saying. And the more we deny thinking along those lines, we're just holding ourselves in the prisons of exile.
All right, again, this is the Messiah Hour on Israel Sports and News Radio. My guest is Rabbi David Katz, co-author of the book The World of the Ger. Last question for the Rabbi. We spoke about Ger Toshav a lot. Tell us about Ger Toshav in general, its current status.
So, current status is that there is no status. There's no status. Jubilee comes, status. Until then, no status. Mark my words. Pass this clip around. No status. What that means is it is incumbent on the practitioners and teachers to understand what is available. And it's complicated. It's a minefield. But guess what? Judaism is a minefield. Try going to pray in an Orthodox synagogue for the first time and tell me that's not a minefield. I remember when I was a Baal Tshuva at the very beginning, and it was Friday night. I don't know how to follow a sitter. I had no idea where we were. It's like the rabbi's kid who was like 8 years old was helping me daven, And we got to Kabbalat Shabbat. You know what I thought about that at that time, Ari?
What'd you think?
This is pretty cool. We're learning Kabbalah and Shabbos. I thought, wow, these guys don't hold out. This is great. So, everybody that goes to daven in an Orthodox shul, it's a nightmare. How do you follow along with that? How do you follow that? You don't. You look stupid. You got the paper yarmulke at the kotel, right? That's how you are. And if you want to stick with it, you get with the program. You figure it out. You go buy some tzitzis, put on some tefillin. All right, get a normal yarmulke. Show up tomorrow. Have some cholent. Eat gefilte fish. Get invited Friday night. Talk a Dvar Torah. Get your kitzur Shulchan Aruch. Go to a Gemara shir. Learn your Mishnayos, and you go through the program. If you're not Jewish, you leave the church. You listen to Tovia Singer. You bash Jesus for a while. Okay, you beat yourself up over the church. You find Noahide organizations. You realize heaven go to heaven isn't it. You realize you want more. You're going to think about converting. You're going to think they're going to tell you to divorce your wife, move to Brooklyn. You realize you can't do that. Okay, 3 easy payments, $49.95. Sounds good, but I don't want to do it. What do? You follow the truth. No one said this is easy. And just because it's hard for the servant of God to go through it, the teachers of that, the priestly people, the nation of Israel, must know how to be a priest to the nations. No one said it's easy. You think I'm looking forward to shechting animals in the temple? I don't know what to do. I have no idea what to do. In terms of Meiser and Truma, Ari's going to bring his cow, and I got to look at it and say, Ari, there's a little spot here. You got to take it back. I don't know what I'm going to be doing. But I'll tell you what, the day that Ari Lewis shows up to the temple with an offering, I'm going to have to know what I'm doing. So too when the non-Jew learns Torah, we say a non-Jew learns Torah is like a Kohen Gadol. Why? Because it's complicated. We have to rise to that challenge. The nations are showing up. One day the Jews are going to show up in the temple. One day someone's going to ask a Levi to play a Bob Dylan song, Chas v'Chalila, whatever. All right? He's got to know how to play that guitar and banjo in the temple, whatever it is. No one said it is easy. But you have a responsibility to be a servant of God, provide the path of God, reveal God's Shekhinah in the world, and that's the bottom line. You got to pay attention to what people are saying. If someone says non-Jew, non-Jewish Shabbat, don't say it's a Jewish Shabbat. You owe them that much to hear it right. Don't give party lines. There's no mazel for Israel. Yes, there is. There's an argument in the Simsum. No, there's not. There's no Ger Toshav status. Duh. No one said there is. So forth and so on.
All right, you've listened to another episode of the Messiah Hour here on Israel Sports News Radio. If you like what you heard, you want to send a donation, you can do so via PayPal, IsraelSportsRadio@yahoo.com. Again, the PayPal is IsraelSportsRadio@yahoo.com, different than the website. And my guest has been Rabbi David Katz, co-author of the book The World of the Ger. You can find the Rabbi's websites, gergear.com, also somazal.com. Rabbi, thank you for being on the program. Great job as always.
Thanks for having me back, Ari, and look forward to next time with you.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Again, the email messiahhour@gmail.com. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or complaints, it is a Jewish country after all. Send the email there. Don't complain to me in person. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Be well. God bless, and shalom from Israel.